Welcome back to Animal Crossing New Horizons. I'm dear darling. I should be seeing what's going on our lovely island of Fawnhollow today, where I don't think there's anything happening in Animal Crossing today. 11th of April. I don't know why. 11th of April just seems like it's a significant day, but I can't really think of anything which happens on today, so I guess not. I guess the biggest thing that will be happening is Crazy Red's inventory or stock will have reset, and we're still hoping for that Baston FTT or the Rosetta Stone to appear in there. But yeah, what am I going to talk about today? I'm not really sure. I guess we could talk a little bit about like Skullgirls or whatever, because I was I think I mentioned it before, like in passing recently, where I was like, oh, I kind of want to play like, you know, a fighting game again. And Skullgirls and Bum's Fighting Herds are the two I own, and the two I actually really liked when I tried them out. Mainly because I quite like animations, I'm not gonna lie. And I know it's not necessarily everyone's style, and you know, Skullgirls especially is one which is a bit more divisive, and my own personal thoughts on it is like, you know, I like parts of it, and then some parts of it I'm just like, yeah, it's a bit too much for me. You know, I like characters like Peacock. I think Peacock is one of the coolest characters I've ever seen in a game. The whole using the 1920s early mechanics, I suppose, as well. No, 1920s aesthetic, I suppose, as actual mechanics. This is a long loading screen. What is going on? Similar to like I was saying with Cuphead, I like Double quite a lot, and where she just like seamlessly morphs into and people and sort of like Eldritch being a monstrosity. But we'll get into that in a bit. Hello there, everyone. And I'm Fawnhollow. It's 3:35 PM on Monday, April 11th, 2022. So we have a visitor staying up at campsite. Yeah, and if you don't know Skullgirls, it's a 2D fighting game. It's, well, I'm not much of a fighting game person, so I don't really know what comparisons people draw it to, but I assume Marvel vs. Capcom is a frequent comparison. And I don't know how close it is to BlazBlue or Guilty Gear, because I've never played any of those ones. I've only played Marvel vs. Capcom, so that's really what I can comment on. But it's like that. It's reasonably fast-paced and that sort of thing, and it's got a what's the style? Dark deco style. Raymond, dark deco style. So think of like the Batman cartoons and that sort of thing, I guess. It's sort of like it's like a glitzy, glamorous town with a dark underbelly of a glitzy and glamorous. I don't even know what era town. The big band era. What era is that? Is that 1920s as well? It might be 1920s. I'm not really sure. But it's quite, shall we say, risque. Is how I describe it. A lot of the characters have, you know, obviously. I'm trying to think, because I have a lot of different age audiences for. No, sorry, my audience is a lot of different ages, I suppose. Well, when it comes to who watches Animal Crossing, and you know, Animal Crossing is very kid-friendly games. I'm, you know, going to dance around delicately about topics which are a bit more like mature, but it's a very risque, I suppose, in its aesthetic and that sort of thing. And it leans quite heavily into it. And some characters, I'm just like, oh yeah, okay, I think it fits a character reasonably well. Things like Eliza, I think it is pretty fair. Valentine is like. Valentine and Cerebello are just like, okay, those are very much more risque characters. It seems kind of sort of in line with her personality. And then some characters where it feels just like, it's not really my sort of thing. I think it goes a bit too far with fan servicey, but honestly, it's it's a legitimate Rosetta Stone. But everyone's got their taste in that sort of thing, and everyone's got like different, I suppose, thresholds where it's like, okay, this is a bit too much of what I say. I would say it's never like too much, but it was just not necessarily to my taste. Where I'm just sort of like, you know, I understand, you know, the appeal of it, but for me personally, I'm just sort of like, didn't have to be like that for me. But like, I suppose if I was making a game, which I'm not, you know, I'm very aware I've basically nothing to do with the game, I would have perhaps toned it down a bit. But my opinion doesn't really matter, I suppose, in that case, because a lot of people do enjoy the sort of aesthetic style it's got going on, and I'm not going to be like, you're wrong, because that's just obviously false, and well, obviously a no opinion to say, just call you out, call people out, just being like you're wrong or right or whatever, because I'm not the arbiter, I'm not the judge of all of that or whatever. But one thing I do really appreciate Skullgirls for is it has very nice animations, because I believe it's all entirely hand drawn, which is crazy. Or maybe not entirely, maybe it's like sketch. No, I don't really remember. You can look it up. But Skullgirls is even crazier in the fact that it's probably the most ridiculous comeback story I think I've ever heard of when it comes to game releases. If you don't know, Skullgirls is about 10 years old now, and I was only actually thinking about it recently this morning, because I saw a post about there was like a 10-year anniversary or something that it's celebrating, and I was like, oh my god, it's 10 years old. I remember when it was first released. how did I even know it first released? You know, this is the craziest. Okay, I remember how I figured out how I even found this game. It was because way back in the day, and it's going to come full circle, and you're going to be like, wow, this is a crazy story. Way back in the day when I used to watch My Little Pony Friendship is Magic, when it was like on the first or second season, I can't really remember. Maybe it was on a later season or something. Some fans of a game wanted to make the show wanted to make a video game, and they wanted to make a 2D fighting game, a la, you know, Marvel's Capcom, etc, etc. And it's a game that they released, and it's called My Little Pony Fighting is Magic, and it was a fan project which, you know, they made, and but the one thing, you know, obviously I can say with retrospect is they should have probably released much more frequently, but it was a game that they basically kept under lock and key, and they were planning when it's finished to basically release it as a fan game, but unfortunately along the way it got shut down, ceased and desisted by Hasbro, which is fair enough, in the sense that whenever you make fan works, you're always towing that sort of line. A lot of the time, corporations and big companies will just, you know, look the other way because, you know, it's not really in their best interest to go around chasing, you know, like tiny creators or whatever, who are just making simple fan works and that sort of thing. So, well, you know, if anything, is better publicity. But the thing is, you know, with trademarks, is because of the weirdo system or whatever, if you don't defend your trademarks, you might eventually lose them. So if you allow too, like, bigger sort of fan work to, if a fan work gets too big or gets too much attention, or, you know, starts infringing on the trademark, eventually the company has to stand in and be like, yo, okay, legally we actually just can't let this slide anymore. Which is, you know, you might have your own criticisms on the trademark laws and that sort of thing, and I don't think I'm well acquainted or well informed enough about it to really have that balance, I suppose, of criticism on it. But I do like the fact that, you know, you can create fan works about something, and normally the rule just goes, as long as it doesn't get too crazy and you just don't start like making money off it, you're fine. Which is kind of like what, you know, what trademarks and copyrights, I suppose, are in that sort of case. So we made the game. It was a pretty cool game. The only reason we even have like a fan game of it right now is because it got leaked at some point, when like 4 characters was done and they were working on the other 2, and it got leaked at that point, and then some other team who were separate from that team were just like, yo, we're just going to finish this, and we're just going to finish it, and they just released it, and then that's why there is this Fighting is Magic game. And you also might know that those Fighting Magic people eventually went on to make the game dev team Main 6 and make them's Fighting Herds, but that's a story for another time. So the only reason I know about Skullgirls is because they sent out like voice editions for the My Little Pony characters, and, you know, obviously I wasn't going to audition. I can't do any of their voices or anything. They're a little bit out of my acting capabilities, however, but I remember looking, I can't remember all the other voice actresses of who voiced what, but there was a lot of them at the time in the My Little Pony community or whatever. They were quite notable for it. And then I remember the one who did Rarity, because Rarity and Rainbow Dash, I remember, are 2 very specific voices, but I remember at the time being like, not many people can do these voices well. Rainbow Dash, I guess, because it's got a huge amount of like raspiness in the voice, and sort of like controlled voice cracks. It makes it like it's a very unique voice type, I suppose, which makes her a voice quite difficult to replicate. And Rarity's is another one, because a lot of people just give her a British accent, but she doesn't have a British accent. She's got more like a transatlantic accent or whatever, which is not exactly far more common. And then I remember she also has a lot of grandioseness into her voice or whatever, and, you know, she's rather expressive, I suppose. And I remember listening to the person they cast to do Rarity's voice, who was also my favourite character, and I was like, oh, this person's actually really good. Who is this? And I looked her up, and her name is Kimlin Tran, if I recall. And at the time she was, you know, that was obviously 10 years ago, she was a much more low-level voice actress who had like small parts and that sort of thing, and I saw her YouTube channel, and I'm like for some reason I watched her voice demo, and when I saw the game Skullgirls, she voices a character called Miss Fortune in it, and I was like, oh, that's a pretty cool game, I wonder what this is. And I saw it was like Skullgirls, and then I never looked it up again until way later I stumbled across it again. I can't remember exactly when. Like, I just randomly stumbled across it. Maybe it got like its full release or something, and I saw Skullgirls. I was like, whoa, Skullgirls, that's a cool game. Why does this look familiar? And then you know, I saw Miss Fortune, the character, and I was like, oh yeah, that's why. So that's literally the only reason I know about Skullgirls, is because it came from My Little Pony Friendship is Magic fighting game. And the crazy thing about that's gone full circle is because when that My Little Pony Fighting is Magic game got shut down, the creator of My Little Pony Friendship is Magic, Lauren Faust, got in touch with the dev team, was like, yo, that sucks, basically. Why don't I create 6 new characters for you, and then you can create this game with your own IP, basically. And then they were just like, you know, of course, the devs, some people were like, yeah, and some people were like, no, and then they had to like restructure around it, and then they created Firm's Fighting Herds. from it using Laura and Faust's characters, which, you know, it's released right now. You can go play it, and I think it's quite a fun game. I think, as I say, Vem's Fighting Heads and Skullgirls are my 2 favourite fighting games. What was I going to say? And the crazy thing is, ages ago when Skullgirls had a Kickstarter to try and like fund future characters which are coming out, because they had a lot of like, they basically had a falling out with one of their developers, or not developers, but their publishing studio. I can't really recall it, but it was a huge kerfuffle of that sort of thing, and it basically kind of dissolved, and like the entire team got fired, and they had to redo it, and then they basically worked on it a year to get it re-released onto PlayStation and Xbox under the name Second Encore, because the previous publishers were just like, yo, we're not going to publish it anymore, and they didn't have rights obviously to publish it under Skullgirls, so they had to publish it under a different name, Skullgirls Second Encore. They basically were like, okay, we need a Kickstarter because we actually need to get paid to do this. It's very much a label of love at this point. So we had a Kickstarter. It was a crazy Kickstarter. And one of the stretch goals we had on Kickstarter was obviously, you know, we had like extra characters. But one of them was like, we'll give the Skullgirls engine to the Vem's Fighting Heads team. So it's gone all full circle, all over again. At least my personal involvement, well, not personal involvement, personal understanding of the story. And then, you know, that stretch goal got met because a load of people who had in the My Little Pony fandom were just like, yo, we got money, let's just spend it on this. And they got funding, and they got their engine. So, you know, those 2 games that end up being quite closely linked in a very sort of strange cosmic way, I suppose. And I don't really know if I have anything else to really add on to that, except I was like, wow, that's crazy. Anyway, so yeah, Skullgirls had like a crazy story. There's a good video on it. It's called like Skullgirls, the game that refuses to die or something. They had a huge, like they had a publisher falling out, so we had to like, an entire team got fired. We had to restructure. We had a Kickstarter, which was a crazy success, and then like there was again more like controversies, and then like one of their creators was just turned out to be like a really horrible person, and then like they had to go through another developer or publisher, and basically somehow, unfathomably, Skullgirls has kept alive throughout all the setbacks and has still got a reasonable audience today and that sort of thing, and I think that's great. To be perfectly honest, because I always thought Skullgirls was a really, really fun game. Like, it's rare for me, I suppose, to be like ignoring aesthetics. I think mechanically this is a really fun game, and I'm not even an expert in fighting games, but I hear there's a lot of things in Skullgirls which they do really correct. And one of the things with both Skullgirls and Vem's Fighting Heads is they were like, I think one of the first to develop the rollback netcode or whatever, which I don't really understand particularly well, but it's basically some sort of network code or whatever, which really allows smooth online gameplay, even when there's a high latency between the 2 people who are playing, which, you know, is very important in fighting games, because in fighting games, like far more than any other game genre, I believe, every single like second or microsecond counts. Like, dropping frames in a fighting game is crazy hindrance. You know, seeing at like punches, it's like fast punches and kicks can come out in a matter of like 5 frames or whatever. It really matters that frame count is consistent and that sort of thing. So that's obviously a particularly good thing. And yeah, and I assume it's just got a load of mechanics which are just interesting from other fighting games and that sort of thing. I don't really know, because I don't really play many fighting games. I just kind of like the sort of the general idea is that a lot of the characters had, like I talked about it before, Peacock, one of the characters, she's based around like a 1920s Rubber Hose sort of cartoon style, you know, like Betty Boop, early Disney Mickey Mouse sort of cartoons, those sort of thing, Felix the Cat, and she's crazy. She basically breaks the laws of physics like all the time, following cartoon physics is her entire kit. How did you get here so quickly, Lily? And it's super cool, and she's super fun. And I think a lot of the aesthetics are pretty cool. Like I said, I think Double's a pretty cool idea, where she shapeshifts into basically all the other characters using unused moves from their prototype sets and prototype kits, I assume. I'm trying to think what other characters I think are pretty cool. I think Miss Fortune's a pretty cool character in herself. She can like she basically can, her story is that she's like eaten this gem or something, which like means that she can't die. So despite the fact she got like chopped up or something and killed, like she can't die. Like her body parts can sort of like detach and that sort of thing. She's kind of like a Mr. Potato Head sort of thing, but as a human. Oh, you are Melbourne? Melba. Something like that. And you have a very like calming expression, I'll certainly say. But she's a very interesting character because she can like literally detach her head and have her head as a separate entity on the field, and the head can do things and attack separately compared to her, and it's crazy. But they have some really cool character designs, and of course the animations. Oh, that's very satisfying. Look at these 3 Venus shells or whatever, or conchas. It's very, very satisfying. And they're very like appealing, I suppose. Character designs about something like Squiggly's another one. She's like a zombie opera singer kind of, and it's like, oh, that's pretty cool. And yeah, it was just crazy to see the announcement and be like, whoa, it's been 10 years since Skullgirls was announced. Oh my god, I was like 15 or whatever when I first even heard about Skullgirls. And now they're having celebrations, and now they're finally releasing Black Dahlia, who was a character I really wanted in the game. And it's crazy to the fact that Skullgirls even said, no, talk to Fawnhallow before you sit down. And I'm sure part of the fact that they've even survived is that the fact they've got a mobile game. I don't actually know what a mobile game is. I assume it's a simplified like fighting game, but for mobile or whatever. It's fair enough. And I assume they use microtransactions, which is basically the only way which mobile games tend to make money, to be perfectly honest. So that's a whole reason I assume that they can actually fund a lot of things. I guess? I don't actually know if that's true or not. That's just kind of random, baseless assumptions, I'm guessing. Yeah, they have a lot of cool things. Like they have variable team sizes. Like a lot of, it's quite typical in fighting games that it's either 1v1 or it's a 3v3. Some rare ones are certainly a 2v2. But with Skullgirls, it is dynamic. You can choose. You can choose to play as one super buffed character, or you can play as 3 slightly weaker characters, but you have open, you have far more options like available to you because you have 2 assists, which you can call at any time. And with strengths and weaknesses to both. Yeah, and the fact that Skullgirls now is actually sort of expanding its roster, because on release it only had 8 characters, which is quite small for a fighting game, to be fair. Like, I mean, if you play like Marvel vs. Capcom, you know, there's like 40 characters, like Smash itself, even a small, only the first iteration, even the first iteration had like 12 characters? That seems 10 characters maybe. And that was on Nintendo 64, and that was like 25 years ago or something. And nowadays, you know, Smash Ultimate's a bit of an exception, but even Smash 4 had like 40 or so characters, I'd imagine. So 8 characters is a very tiny roster, but they've been slowly adding them, and that's what the Kickstarter was for. They, you know, released more characters. They released like Squiggly, Eliza, Big Band, and Beowulf. So then they've got 12 characters, and now they've got an expansion pack where 4 more characters were being released, including so far Annie, Umbrella, and we know Black Dahlia, and people are speculating the last character is going to be Marie. And it's pretty cool because I remember the Kickstarter, like. I didn't actually back the Kickstarter, which, you know, I do kind of regret. I should have backed a lot of these Kickstarter games, you know, Skullgirls and Bums Fighting Herds, which I was interested in at the time, but, you know, it's a bit late now, and I was also, like, kind of young, so only had so much money, etc, etc. But, what was I going to say? I forgot. Yeah, they had like a voting poll for like different characters that they could that they would include into the game, that sort of thing. And the one I really wanted was Black Dahlia, because her description was basically she like doesn't fight fair, and I'm like, you know me, I love gimmicks. I love wild and wacky gimmicks. You give me a game and you're, you know, a competitive game and that sort of thing, I'm like, get this out. I don't care if it's balanced. Give me weird stuff. That's what I'm all about. I want to know if I can do something fun. I want to know if I can come up with some strange strategy, etc, etc. I want to know if there's weird interactions I can do. And then, you know, I'll settle into whatever the meta is. But I want to experiment like crazy to begin with. And Black Dahlia's description, I was like, this seems really cool. She doesn't fight fair, basically. So she's got a load of, like, tricksy things up her sleeve. And hopefully, I don't know what she's going to be planning on, because obviously I'm not a fighting game expert. I'm not really sure what would be fair or not in a fighting game. But I hope she, like, breaks a lot of conventions. You know, she does a lot of weird stuff which breaks, you know, usual rules of fighting games. That's what I would like to see. But of course, I don't know if that really holds any weight. And if anything, I delegate. I leave that decision or leave that commentary up to people who actually are well versed in fighting games, rather than me, who is very much casual. But the whole reason that I talk about it was because of course, I mentioned before, I was like, oh, you know, I had a bit of a craving to play, you know, or whatever, and I never really got around to it. And then I was talking about it with one of my friends last night, and then he was the one who has it. He actually has it because I bought a Humble Bundle ages ago, which included, but I bought it, I think, for Rivals Ether, which by the way I've never actually played. And it came with a game of Skullgirls, and I was like, yo, who wants this? And he was like, oh, I'll take it. You know, I played it with him last night for like an hour or so or something. Honestly, super fun. Even it's a thing because I think it helps that we're actually quite evenly matched. You know, he's actually mechanically very good in a lot of games. Like I would say he's probably actually mechanically better than me. I'd assume. But he obviously is not very familiar with Skullgirls, and you know, like he only knew about it like when I bought it from that bundle, and instead of me like who's known about it for 10 years and has played it like here and there in passing. So it's sort of like the game knowledge versus game mechanics, which one's superior? And it turns out they're kind of equal. Although you know, I did win about 4 more games, although we did play like 50. It's a very addictive game. Like I always say, fighting games are really, really fun, but it's just the amount of depth that's in them, the amount of things you eventually had to learn to get from that beginner to like intermediate stage is insanity. It's in fact, I would say, rather off-putting, you know, to be like, oh, you know, someone learn a little bit about fighting game. What do I do? It's like, what the heck's Oki? You're going Tiger Knee? DHC? X out to alpha counter? Into an unsafe plus on hit? What does that even mean? Obviously, nowadays, I sort of, I mean, it doesn't really matter if you know definition-wise what it means, and more matters like if you understand like in the practice of context of what it actually means. So even though I understand like Oki is like Oki Katse or something, it means when you're waking up, which means from when you're in a crumpled like down position on the ground, it's when the state of your character going up. Even if I know definition-wise what it means, I can't really apply it to anything because I don't really know what it's used for. It's both like, I guess it would be awe-inspiring would be how I describe it. It's like, do we not have a collect wood one? A collect 2 mod? 2 more on Deep Sea Creature. It's kind of awe-inspiring how deep the rabbit hole goes for fighting games. You just, oh, that's why, because the eggs don't count for the mission. You just have an absolutely absurd amount of things which you can learn about in fighting games, and all these mechanics which give fighting games a huge amount of depth. But it's just like, it's so dense for a beginner to even like get involved in, which is why I will say both Fighting Herds and Skullgirls, Fighting Herds I think is as much a recent thing because I didn't have it last time I played. They have like tutorial modes. Skullgirls has a very comprehensive tutorials, which is very good at sort of teaching you exactly like beginner sort of tips and tricks, beginner mechanics, and you know, like this is what a combo is, this is how you block, this is what a mix-up is, etc, etc. And this is what something being unsafe means, which is nice, but you know, but it's still sort of like only scratching the surface of really the complexity that hides behind these sort of fighting games. But I will say, it's certainly one of the reasons why I actually probably stuck with Skullgirls is, you know, I booted up and like, of course, aesthetics drew me to it, and I was like, whoa, these animations are wild. Look at that. Look at this peacock character, she's so cool. And then, as usual, aesthetics tend to draw people in, but it's the raw mechanics of it which kept people to stay and like dedicate a lot of time to it. And the tutorial really helped with that. You know, the tutorial helped to obviously break down a lot of simple concepts to me. Like, I understood what a combo was, but I didn't really understand how to do a combo. And I understood the concept of blocking, and I understood things could be punished and that sort of thing, but I didn't understand what I was meant to be looking for or what that really meant. And I understood there was a high and a low block, but I didn't really understand like how I was meant to, or like what situations I should block high, what situations I should block low, you know, the concept of overhead or the concept of jump-ins, etc, etc. And that actually let me stay with it, I suppose, stay engaged with it. And, you know, I beat the story mode, I think, on all the characters. I think at that point, I don't actually know if that's true. This is probably where I look at achievements to see if I have or not. Like, I've got 26 hours on it in total, which is, it feels surprisingly high, I don't really know. And yeah, I don't think I've played online all that often, because it's a problem with these sort of things. Excuse me, especially in fighting games, is it's any sort of multiplayer matchup game really suffers if you don't have a big enough audience, I suppose, to support a big enough player base, I suppose, because it's not only is a fighting game incredibly what's a word? Intimidating. That's a word for beginners to start playing. It's even harder for them to get into the idea of playing, I suppose, like online matches and that sort of thing, because because it's so hard for beginners to get into, it tends to, I suppose, result in a much more experienced player base and that sort of thing. So you don't have as many beginners or new people to play with. So it's really the sort of thing where I'm lucky I have some friends who probably do want to play it. You know, I pitched the idea to some other friends and they were like interested, and then it was like, okay, you should probably wait for it to be on sale. Well, it is like a 10-year-old game, so it'll probably be like pennies when it actually goes on sale. I don't know. Don't know if that's true, by the way, or not, so don't quote me on that. Yeah, so it's really nice to be able to play it with some people who are around your sort of skill level, and you can learn together and grow together rather than, you know, just going online and get bodied. That sort of thing. And I suppose it doesn't really matter too much to me because, as I say, I'm not really that obsessed with competitiveness and like rank, etc., etc. So I don't really. We should just like shoot us into water. We don't actually care if we get the egg or not, right? What? So it doesn't actually bother me that I'm not so drawn to playing online, I suppose. But yeah, Skullgirls is cool. It's got a lot of cool concepts, cool animations. It's just a bit dense. And I will say, if you find Skullgirls a bit dense, if you're just like, I was a bit intimidating, the six button sort of layout and the combinations you had to press, there's so many different, a lot of different characters, a lot of different mechanics, because Skullgirls does have a lot of mechanics. May I recommend Them's Fighting Herds? It's a much more simplistic, at least that's how I describe it. I'm not actually sure it's true, but I'm just like, I feel like it's a more simplified version of Skullgirls, you know. Instead of having 6 buttons, it's got 4 buttons. It's kind of only 3 buttons plus a magic button. It's a 1v1 game. It's got a lot of similar mechanics, but also things which are a bit different, etc., etc. And hopefully it'll be a lot more simplified, especially with a smaller cast, and it'll be a lot easier to understand all the characters. But you also might get bored of it, so I don't know. But this is just sort of my thing, being like, if you want to get into a fighting game, Skullgirls and Them's Fighting Herds are both very good, and that's mainly because they have a very comprehensive tutorial, I think, with it. So anyway, congratulations to Skullgirls having a 10-year anniversary, I suppose. In fact, it's even made it this far in the first place. I can't wait to see Black Dahlia in action. Maybe that will actually, so even if I, or at least if I start playing it more, perhaps that will sway me to actually purchase the fighter pass to get the other characters in as well. And yeah, I mean, I do have the achievement Threads of Fate, follow all threads to their inevitable conclusions. There's 47 achievements in this game. What the heck is all of this? I don't know what all of these are. Oh, these must be achievements for the endings. These weren't in it when I did it. That's what it seems like. Anyway, it's cool. It's a cool game. Like more people get to play it, that sort of thing. I know it's not necessarily everyone's style. That's fair enough, you know. Here and there, aesthetics definitely are an important part in games and how much you enjoy them, that sort of thing. But Skullgirls, Them's Fighting Herds are both very cool games, is what I'd say. Even as me, as quite a fighting game casual. No, I won't comment on a perspective of if you're a fighting game pro on what you think about it, but they seem well received. So yeah, I guess we'll kind of round off this episode here. So if you have been watching, thank you very much. It's been Animal Crossing New Horizons. I've been Dear Darling. Any likes, comments, subscriptions, shares, greatly appreciated. Join me Dear Darling Discord. Follow me follow me in Twitter, or join my Discord down below. Hope to see each other again. But for now, it's our farewell. So until next time, bye bye for now. That ending did not sound right. Oh well.